Welcome to video number 2 on my YouTube channel. If you haven't seen it already, video number 1 was a little introduction to myself, introduction to the channel, find out a little bit about the gym, what I do for a living. I'll put it above so you can click on it to have a little look through. Like I said within the video about 20 times, I was getting so bored of saying it myself, but I do really want these videos to be really educational. So today we're going to be looking at 14 fitness myths. So these myths are going to focus mainly on training specifically. I would like to do a bit of a series where maybe we might do one that looks on the myths of nutrition. But for today, we're typically going to talk a lot about how to train and some really stupid things that people say. So before we get started, please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a like. Let's get into it. So number 1 on our fitness myths that we're trying to debunk is that we can reduce body fat from a specific area. This is completely untrue. I often get it with clients on their first consultation where they come to me and they say, James, I really want you to help me reduce belly fat, reduce some bingoing, reduce some of my double chins, and it's simply impossible. We can't specifically use an exercise to target body fat. So for example, in terms of doing like sit-ups or something, or a core exercise, that will do nothing in terms of burning fat from our stomach. The way in which we burn body fat is through an overall calorie deficit. I don't want to go into too much detail about this because I want to do a separate video that's more in depth, but essentially all a calorie deficit means is that you consume less calories than your body needs throughout a day. Consuming less calories throughout the day than your body needs, your body will essentially tell itself, I'm not getting enough fuel from food, I'm going to have to use this stored body fat as fuel, and that's essentially how we burn body fat. Unfortunately, down to genetics, we can't determine where we hold body fat, just the same as we can't determine where we lose it from. Your genetics might make you hold it a bit more in your stomach, you might hold it a bit more in your bum. It's just your genetics, unfortunately. Through an overall calorie deficit, your body will take a percentage from everywhere to slowly bring down your overall body fat. So number 2 is that fat can be turned to muscle and muscle can be turned into fat. This is absolute nonsense. Muscle cells, fat cells are completely different entities. They do not cross paths at all. No way starting training will your body turn its stored body fat into muscle, and vice versa. If you are stopping training, will your muscle turn to fat? It's a complete myth. So number 3 on our myths is that fasted training is better than fed training. This is a complete myth. If we're looking at your goal being fat reduction, then it doesn't really matter if the training is fed or fasted. The goal, like previously said, is a calorie deficit, whatever suits you personally. If you personally prefer to train without any food in your system, go for it. If you like to eat before, that's fine. The main goal is your daily calorie consumption and your daily calorie expenditure. All I'd say on fasted training is if your goal is to build muscle, build strength, I personally would prefer to be fed. Just because if I'm trying to lift heavy weights, if I'm trying to maintain muscle, maintain strength, build some strength, I personally find that if I've got food in my system, I feel a lot more stronger than if I'm completely fasted. So number 4 is that cardio is for fat loss. Now, I might get a bit of controversy from this. Essentially, for fat loss, we are looking to be in a calorie deficit. Cardio is just essentially a tool to aid in creating a calorie deficit. If you personally don't find that cardio is for you, if you don't enjoy it, you're probably not going to reap the rewards from doing tons of cardio. If you personally like to do a lot of strength training, you're still going to burn in some calories from that, but just think of it as you want to create a calorie deficit and what's going to be the most efficient way to create a calorie deficit for you personally. So number 5 is linked to the previous one. This one is saying that cardiovascular work is bad or has a negative impact on muscle growth. Essentially, this can be true because, as we know, if we're burning more calories, we're more likely to be in a calorie deficit. And if we're trying to build muscle, we need to do the flip. We need to be in a calorie surplus. So we need to be eating more calories every day than your body needs. Because you've given yourself more calories, your body's wanting to add tissue. You're probably going to add some fat, but we're also going to add some muscle. By doing cardio, it's not going to stop you building muscle. It can be a great tool, especially if you're trying to do a lean bulk. So if you're trying to build muscle and not gain too much body fat, this is a great tool. To be using throughout your training, but cardio does not stop muscle growth at all. In addition to this, cardio can be very beneficial to trying to build some muscle. So there's studies to show that by doing some cardiovascular work alongside trying to build muscle, it, number one, will help you recover a little bit faster from a previous training session, and then also it's going to have tons and tons of health benefits. Number 6 is that sweating means you're unfit. This one's really funny for me because I personally sweat a hell of a lot. I don't know whether it's just down to genetics, especially if I've been joining with clients and they see me sweating loads, like, wow, you're a personal trainer, I thought you're supposed to be fit. And it can't be further from the truth that sweating means you're unfit. Essentially, it's down to genetics. In some cases, very far-fetched, you could say that if you sweat a lot, you're very good at auto-regulating your body temperature. That could just mean that sweating means you are quite fit. So next up, we've got that soreness means that you've had a great workout. Now, yes, this can be the case. Definitely after some good workouts, you might feel a bit of soreness called DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. But don't use this as an indicator to how well your workout went. I often get from clients who've come into a session from the previous week and they've said, I wasn't sore last week, I must not have worked hard enough. And I explain to them, that isn't an indicator of how well the session went. As your training experience improves and you get more used to working out, your soreness will decrease over time. Another thing to bear in mind is that we're looking to try and train muscle groups multiple times a week, and if you are too sore, if your soreness goes past 72 hours, more than likely you've overtrained the muscle, and that means that we can't train it for a prolonged time and we can't progress. So number 8 is that light weights with high repetitions is for toning and heavy weights for low repetitions is for bulking. This is completely untrue. Typically for clients who are quite new to training, we'll always start them on higher rep schemes just because we want to make them feel a bit more confident doing the exercise, build up some technique, and then we can progressively increase the weight, decrease the repetition range. But this does not mean that you will be going more bulky rather than toned. Toned essentially means it's not actually a scientific thing within the fitness industry. What I take from toning is that you are at a low enough body fat level that you can see some form of muscular shape. How do we do that? Reduce your body fat, increase some muscle mass. How do we increase muscle mass? We need to get stronger through all areas of rep ranges, so we need to get stronger at lifting heavier weights for less reps, and we need to get stronger at lighter weights for more reps. So next, following on from the light weights toned, heavy weights bulky, is that weight training makes women bulky, and that can't be further from the truth. I program personally for a lot of my clients who come to me who want to get toned, some form of resistance training. Why? Like I previously said, we're looking to reduce body fat whilst having some muscle mass. That's how we get toned. So this idea that we're going to get bulky is so far from the truth. Number one, women's genetic structure isn't made to get big and bulky. It definitely can be done, but it's not just like you walk in a gym, lift a weight up and you're going to build loads of muscle. Take it from a guy. Guys have a lot more testosterone, which is a lot more anabolic to build muscle. I've been trying to build muscle so many years, it's not that easy. It takes a lot of different factors to build a big physique. So next is that free weight, so dumbbells and barbells is better than machinery. This isn't necessarily true. Obviously, if I've got a novice client, someone who's fairly new, I'm going to want to put them onto a machine first, just because they can build up some confidence with their technique. It's going to be a lot more fixed and stable, so they can really home in on the technique before we go to free weights. Obviously, free weights are a little bit more advanced. We're going to have to use a lot of stabilizing muscles to perform the exercises, but that doesn't mean that one's better than the other. All I'd ever say for anybody is find what works for you best. So what might work for one person might not work for one person. You might prefer to do squats, the other person might prefer to do a hack squat machine. It's totally down to personal preference. See what works for you, see what you feel the most, and stick with that. So next is that ass to grass on a squat is best. Now, I see this a lot on social media with other trainers, telling their clients get as low as they can. The big problem with this is, number one, a lot of people who are sat at a desk all day, who are sat in the car all day, are not going to have the mobility to get all the way down. Typically, when we see a back squat or any kind of squat, we have a range of motion. If you go past that range of motion, we'll see a bit of a pelvic tilt and we'll go into something called spinal flexion. This isn't necessarily the world's worst thing, but if we have a lot of weight on our back and we're not used to it, we are putting ourselves at a higher risk of injury. So essentially, all I'd say about this is go to your range of motion, go to where feels comfortable for you personally. Obviously, if you're wanting to improve, you might want to try and improve your flexibility, improve the range of motion so you can get lower, but don't put yourself at a higher risk of getting an injury. So number 12 is that single body part workouts is best for muscle growth. Now, I feel like this has really come about big time bodybuilders who might do a chest workout, a shoulder workout, and really we have to think about, number one, their training age. They've been training a very long time. They need a lot more sets and reps within their session to get some form of progression. For a lot of people who aren't taking any form of steroid or anabolic, they're not going to be able to take that much volume within a session. So definitely I would personally prescribe multiple body part sessions so we can try and train muscle groups multiple times a week. Obviously it comes down to how often you can get in the gym. If you're getting in the gym twice a week, you might want to do something like full body sessions. A bit more, you might want to do like a push-pull legs workout. Also, I like a little bit of upper body splits. So one session doing upper body, other session doing lower body, and then repeat it. But the goal is to hit muscle groups multiple times a week. So number 13 is that weight training or resistance training is just for bodybuilders, and women, children and old people should not train with weights. Now this is completely untrue. Obviously I've spoke about why women should definitely be doing some form of resistance training previously, but especially when we're looking at older people, so resistance training is shown to have fantastic benefits in terms of preventing osteoporosis. It's going to strengthen a lot of that connective tissue like tendons and ligaments. We're also going to make sure we keep that bone density as we get older. It's going to deteriorate. Obviously I'm not going to be putting 100 kilos on the back and telling them to do a 1 rep max squat, but some form of resistance training is going to be advantageous 100% to old people. Similar to young people, I'm obviously not going to get them doing some crazy weights, but definitely getting stronger with their body weight, still technically resistance training. Also with children, resistance training is going to be great for building that foundation strength that we want. There's a lot of myths out there to say that resistance training is going to stunt your growth, which is completely untrue. But some form of resistance training is definitely advantageous to everybody. So the final fitness myth debunked is number 14, which is that your training should be determined by what body type you are. So for people that don't know, we have 3 main body types. We have an ectomorph, which is typically a thin, skinny person, which, for example, like a basketball player. We've got a mesomorph, which is kind of a bit more stocky, muscular figure. Think of like a rugby player. And then we've got an endomorph that's a bit more chunkier. Just think sumo wrestling. Now, speaking from personal experience, when I finished playing basketball, I was extremely lean and tall. I was definitely an ectomorph. As I've progressed in training, obviously I'm still extremely skinny, but I'm definitely more towards a mesomorph, so a little bit more stockier and still quite lean. Definitely it could be said about 16 weeks ago when I was at the height of my bulking phase, I was a lot chunkier. Maybe not to the extent where I'm an endomorph, but I've definitely been towards that end. Throughout them stages, my training didn't change in any way. Obviously, for you personally, you might be in one of these categories. You might be in a couple of these categories. You might be in between. We're trying to lose some body fat. We're going to want to get in a calorie deficit. How do we get in a calorie deficit? We're going to want to burn more calories. So you might want to incorporate a bit more cardiovascular work. If you're trying to build some more muscle, we obviously want to be in a calorie circle, so you might want to hold back on a bit of cardio and build some more muscle through, obviously, resistance training. So there you go, they're the 14 myths debunked, I hope. Any of them are a bit unclear to you, please comment below or message us on any of the social media. I'll be happy to go through them with you. So please comment. Make sure if you haven't already, give this video a like. Make sure you've subscribed so you get notified about any future videos we do. And we'll see you on the next one.